tomorrow will be better. An object is acted in the north direction by a force of 5,000 Newton, and in the east direction another force of magnitude 7,000 Newton acts on the same object. Find the resultant force and its direction. Follow me, dear friends. Solution. I just wish to remind you here that we are talking about forces, which in this case are acting perpendicularly to each other on the same object. Therefore, looking at the two natures, we can anticipate that the resultant force will be more or less something like this in this direction. And let me just make something clear here about the direction of forces, which most candidates always get it wrong. When we're talking about the direction of forces in this particular context where the forces are acting at angles, the direction here is nothing else but the angle of the force in question. So for our case here, if they say find the direction of the resultant force, we're talking about the angle theta here, which we are to find. And to find this, of course, we're going to use a straightable trigonometric function, which we are going to use using the information that we have. So straight away, let's start by finding a resultant force. Now, in accordance to the Pythagorean theorem, which applies for forces acting like this, we have that the resultant force, F in this case, will be given by the square root of the sum of the squares of the individual forces. So we will have here 5,000 all square, and then we will have 7,000 all square. And if you correctly punch this on your calculator, you will have that the resultant will be 8,603.2 Newton. Now, onto the direction of this resultant force, like I said, if you extrapolate this diagram like this so that it looks like a right angle triangle, which is familiar to most of us, then you will notice that this side here is some sort of an opposite to this angle, and then this other side here is an adjacent. Therefore, the most suitable trigonometric function here is a tan function. In other words, tan of this angle here is going to be equal to the opposite, which is 5,000 Newton, divided by the adjacent, which is 7,000. And therefore here, to find theta, it will be the tan inverse of that ratio. All right? So if you punch this correctly on your calculator, you will have that theta is going to be equal to 35.5 degrees. And this is what is meant by the direction of the resultant force. Meanwhile, this is the resultant force here. Be very careful with forces. We are very sensitive to their directions because forces are vector quantities, because tomorrow will be better.